Okay, and we are live. Alright, this is live. This is Sunday, March 25th, 2018. This is 7:30 p.m. here in the Central Time Zone in the US, despite what my system clock says here. Apparently, when I installed Calculate Linux this morning, I didn't set the time zone correctly. Looks like it's set to UTC time. We'll wait a few minutes to see if anybody shows up to join the chat. So what this stream tonight's going to be about is early this morning, I installed Calculate Linux. I believe the version is 17.2. Let me pull that up. Let me go to distro watch. Actually, I got the Calculate 17.12. 17.12.2 is the version number of Calculate. I installed Calculate Linux. This is the XFCE edition of Calculate Linux. I had been running Antics. I installed Antics about a week ago. Week and a half ago, a few days ago. And Antics, I was having some issues with Antics. I was kind of fighting it a bit. So I went ahead and wiped out Antics off this machine here. I went ahead and reformatted the drive and went ahead and installed Calculate Linux 17.12.2. And that was this morning. I did the install, the base install for Calculate Linux. Well, it's the XFCE edition is what I installed. Just your basic install, went really fast, very straightforward. You guys have seen me run through the Calculate Linux install 2 or 3 times on the channel now, because I've reviewed Calculate at least twice that I can remember. I think I did their KDE edition in a review. I think I did their Mate edition in a review. I might have done the XFCE edition, I'm not sure, but I know I did KDE and Mate for sure. Anyway, I really loved Calculate Linux. Every time I reviewed it, I always say, I really want to install Calculate on physical hardware at some point. So I was going to install Calculate Linux on one of my machines, either my main production machine, the desktop here, or this laptop behind me that's currently running Solus. What sped this up a little bit was, again, I was having some issues with Antics. Not that Antics was a bad distro or that I had a bad experience with Antics, but it is mainly geared toward older machines. It is a very, very minimal kind of distro. And I was going to end up tweaking the hell out of Antics to get it to do what I wanted it to do. It would have been easier for me just to go with like a minimal install of Debian and build everything I want to do on that if I was going to do something like that. So it really didn't make sense for me to stick with Antics on this machine. So I am going to play around with Antics some more, though. What I think I'm going to do is, I've got a lot of older hardware, a lot of older machines just laying around in a closet. Some of them 10, 12, 15 years old even. May put Antics on some of them, because that would make a lot more sense as far as a use case for Antics, other than being on my production desktop here. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because I'm going to install all modern hardware, and I was going to base Antics on Debian SID, which is the unstable branch, because I wanted fresh packages, and that's not really what Antics is about. You probably should be on Debian stable if you're running Antics, especially, again, it's for older hardware. So just pull up the news here while I'm waiting for folks to join the stream. 12 hours ago here on ZDNet, Linux Mint announces the Mint Box Mini 2, tiny desktop PC with Intel inside. Now Mint has been doing that for years. I mean, I remember the old Mint box. I've never bought one. I don't run Mint, but I do remember the original Mint box. It's kind of a small form factor PC, kind of almost like a NUC, or what's that System 76 model that they do that's a real small form factor. I can't remember what the model of that is, but very similar. But apparently there's the new version of the Mint box. They're calling it the Mint Box Mini 2. And that's great. We actually need more hardware out there that comes with Linux pre-installed. I think that is the biggest barrier of why Linux is not as popular as it should be. Because in my mind, and I think in most people's mind, anybody that's ever used Windows and Mac OS and Linux, not too many of them are going to say that Windows is the better operating system. So why does Windows have like such a massive market share? It's because it came pre-installed on your computer. Most users are too lazy to install another operating system. Most users are not technically savvy enough to install an operating system on their computer. Most users, I mean, think about your average, just everyday person out on the street, especially nowadays. Like the younger crowd, they don't even know what a computer is. Most of them are only using their smartphones and their tablets. And of course the older generation, they're very not technically savvy. They can't do anything technical. Even just downloading an ISO and writing a bootable USB stick, they're not going to do that. Much less run through an install process. So great news that the Mint Box 2 is a thing. And in the chat, let's see, Steen Broling, hope I pronounced that last name right. Steen, hi DT, watching every of your reviewings from Denmark. Happy Sunday. Hey, and Toss is in the chat. Good evening, Toss. I did a fresh install today, Toss. I got rid of Antics, like you probably were hoping. I did not go with the Mate, though. Not Ubuntu Mate, anyway. Or, isn't that what you're running? Yeah, Ubuntu Mate. This is going to be Calculate Linux. This is their XFCE edition. So, played around with it a little bit today. Of course, I spent most of the day just moving files over. You know, I had all my stuff backed up to an SSD drive. Luckily, I had good backups because I just reinstalled everything a week, maybe 10 days ago when I installed Antics. So I just used the same backed up files. There was really nothing new that I needed saved. Ubuntu Mate, the most beloved unused OS. Huh. Every time I review Ubuntu Mate, I do like it. And I always think, well, you know what, I would be happy in it. But at the same time, it seems kind of boring, you know, when things don't break on you. So I think I'll enjoy Calculate. Calculate will be a little bit different than Antics, because Antics was really geared toward older equipment, that whole minimal in terms of you're probably running machines that are 10, 12 years old, kind of minimal. Not the Arch and Gentoo kind of minimal where you're running, you know, modern hardware, but you just like something a little faster, a little snappier, a little lighter. What made me decide to go ahead and get rid of Antics this morning, though, I was going to make a video this morning, and half the programs I was trying to open up just would not open up. There was something that was broken. I don't know if it was an update. Again, I was basing it on Debian Unstable. You know, maybe not the smartest decision, especially for something like Antics. Again, it's probably they probably would prefer you to run the stable edition of Antics, not the unstable. But, you know, I live dangerously sometimes. Anyway, I was having problems. Programs wouldn't open up. I couldn't get Simple Screen Recorder to open up, so that was going to be a problem recording a video if I can't get Simple Screen Recorder or OBS to open up. So I'm trying to figure out what the problem was, why some of these programs wouldn't open up. So I was going to Google the problem, so I tried to open up Firefox. Firefox wouldn't open up. I was like, okay, well, let me go to the laptop. I've got Solus back here on the laptop. And I started, you know, searching for solutions to whatever problems I had. It might have been a problem with the Infinality font that I installed on the system, because I hated the font rendering in Antics. It was very hard on the eyes. I could not stand the default font rendering compared to the default font rendering in Ubuntu or even something like Manjaro. Beautiful font rendering in Manjaro. Even it's like some of the Gentoo based distros like Sabian has great font rendering. This thing, I was gonna hate it. You know, I was gonna have to distro hop if I had to read that horrible font. So I installed the Infinality, and that might have broke something. I'm not sure. That may have caused some issues. But then I either have to figure out how to fix what was broken, or I have to take Infinality off the machine and deal with the bad font rendering. And I knew for sure I was not going to live with the bad font rendering, because it's, you know, my eyes are not as young as they used to be. So I decided to just go ahead. If I was going to have to spend a couple of hours trying to figure out how to fix some of the problems I was having, you know what, it's time to hop anyway. I'd been on Antics, you know, a week and a half. And I'd been meaning to take a look at Calculate. Sergey, who's always telling me I need to try Calculate every time I mention it. And I'm sure I can ask Sergey for help. You guys probably know Sergey. He comments on pretty much every Linux video that gets posted to YouTube. So yeah, Toss says, I'm pretty sure unstable means unstable. Yeah, that's probably why they labeled it that way. Steen, well, you tried hard. My first name you got right, but not that much my last name. Okay, it's just very hard for you Americans to pronounce. Like you anyways. Okay. Dan's in the chat. Hey, Dan. Alright, let me pull up a little bit of Calculate Linux is what I installed here. So this is the homepage of Calculate Linux. Calculate-linux.org is their website. And what I ended up doing, I went to their products here, the products tab, and they have Calculate Linux Desktop, which obviously is what I wanted. So they offer 4 editions of their desktop edition: KDE, Cinnamon, Monte, and XFCE. I have reviewed the KDE edition and the Monte edition on the channel before, and I really liked them. I'm not sure if I've looked at the XFCE edition before or not, but that's the one I went ahead and downloaded, and I went ahead and installed this machine. I've never really lived in XFCE before on any machine for any length of time, so I wanted to try out XFCE. I think I'll like it because it's light, it's minimal, it's fast, and honestly, the few hours I played with it today, you know, it functions how I would expect it to function. No crashes, no bugginess, no weird graphical glitches that sometimes you have in KDE, GNOME. I don't like things breaking on me. Even though I did that install of Unstable, you know, I don't like my desktop environment and my window managers breaking on me. You know, it's annoying when you go to open programs and they don't open, or like the taskbar is not functioning correctly, the icons are all messed up, or you click on an icon, it opens the wrong program. That's the kind of problems, you know, I was having in KDE when I tried to run it. Anyway, so Calculate Linux, you go to their products, Calculate Linux Desktop, click download Calculate Linux, and they have KDE, Cinnamon, Monte, XFCE editions. They also have a server edition, and then they have what they call a scratch edition, which is like a base install. It does have Xorg on it, it has the X server on it, but really nothing else. Basically, you need to install your own desktop window manager. I didn't want to go through the trouble of doing such a minimal install of Calculate, although I think it would have been interesting. I really wanted to get back up and running by the end of the day. Today is a day off for me, so I really wanted to make at least one video today. And even installing just the XFCE edition, which the install process, 10 minutes. From start to finish, 10 minutes, but then after that you have to update. Updates for these Gentoo based distros sometimes take a long time. The package management can be kind of slow. Also, I had you know, a couple hundred gigs of data I needed to move into this machine. A lot of VMs that I had saved, music, documents, you know, I had a lot of stuff, and that takes hours. Even with the external SSD and my internal SSD that's running in the machine, just moving a couple hundred gigs took almost 3 hours. It took a long time. So back to the chat for a second. We have some more people joining us. Evil Step Twin, XFCE is pretty easy. Yeah, like I said, I don't really use XFCE. I've never used it. Looked at a lot of XFCE distros on the channel, and it's intuitive. Like when I go to find certain settings, certain tweaks, they're in the places I expect to find them, unlike KDE. KDE, I have no idea how to do anything in KDE, and I lived in KDE for a month or two at the beginning of the year, because you guys remember I installed Manjaro KDE, and even after living in that thing for about a month, I still couldn't figure out where half the settings were in KDE. It's just the UI for KDE, it's terrible. The KDE developers really need to reorganize their system settings manager. Keegan is in the chat. Good evening, Keegan. Jeff C., I know you're not a big fan of GUI package managers, but Portage and Calculate has great features for customizing dependencies and builds. I'm glad you mentioned that, Jeff, because I have not even thought about package management in Calculate. I've installed OBS, VirtualBox, GU VCView, Kdenlive, you know, all my applications that I use kind of on a daily basis, and I did them with Emerge in the terminal. But I may check out some GUI package management if it's available in Calculate. I actually haven't even looked into that. So thank you for pointing that out. Evil Step Twin, do what you do. Toss, Manjaro's #2 on DistroWatch. Yeah, they've been #2 on DistroWatch for a little bit, depending on what time you're viewing, if it's a 6-month, 3-month. I know the shorter times, they've been #2 for a little while, because on the Manjaro forums, when I was running Manjaro, I would view the Manjaro forums every now and then, and people would post how excited they were that Manjaro was the #2 most popular Linux distro, which of course is not factual. Mint is not the most popular Linux distro, and Manjaro is not the second most popular Linux distro. The DistroWatch rankings, the page hit rankings on DistroWatch, they rank page hits to the individual distro pages on DistroWatch. They don't rank anything else. They have nothing to do with downloads, installs, hits to anybody's repos. It has absolutely no factual basis as far as Linux popularity. So, matter of fact, just for fun, I love doing this when people mention DistroWatch. Yes, Steen, you are very right. It took me 3 weeks setting up i3 on Debian testing. Yeah. Toss, yeah, it's just a guide. Yep. Well, I'm sure you know this, Toss, but I've had people actually argue with me that. Let's look at the 6-month page hit rankings. Alright, Minna's number 1. Manjaro's number 2. Debian is number 3. Now Debian, pretty popular Linux distro, right? Millions, maybe tens of millions of installs of Debian as far as just the server market. Does anybody really believe Mint or Manjaro has as many installs as Debian? No, not even 10% of what Debian probably has. Debian is far more popular as far as installs than Mint and Manjaro. Much more. And Ubuntu is at number 4. Ubuntu probably has 10 to 20 times more installs than Debian even, because that's how popular Ubuntu is. So this is why this list really doesn't make any sense. You get Fedora. Fedora is a really popular distro. You see a lot of Fedora out in the wild. It's all the way down at 8. Right behind it is True OS. Really? How many of you have just been, out and about and seen anybody running True OS? Arch, very popular Linux distro. Arch, 14, right ahead of Kali Linux. CentOS all the way down at 16. That's kind of crazy. Puppy Linux is at 20, ahead of things like Deepin and Lubuntu. Anyway, the distro watch rankings are fun to look at. I didn't even check to see where Gentoo was or where Calculate was. I know Gentoo is usually way down, like in the 40s. Calculate's probably even lower than that. Alright, back to my Calculate Linux install here. So I downloaded the ISO for the XFCE edition. It was 1.8 gigs in size. And then after the install, the very quick install, I had to update the system. To update the system, Calculate comes with a neat little utility here called the Calculate Linux Update tool. Let's see if I can pull this up. And I'm not going to actually run an update to show you guys this because usually when you update systems it takes a lot of CPU. And I'm live streaming, but basically you have use only stable updates. I left that ticked on. You can do some advanced settings though if you want to pick what repos you want to use, update the overlay cache, update the EIX cache. Anyway, you click run and it runs. And you even get like some output here in this window, kind of like terminal output, but it's not really in a terminal. But that update took a little while. There were 120 or so packages to update. And those kinds of updates in a Gentoo based distro are not quick. In Debian based distros with apt or Arch based distros with Pacman, 120 packages being updated, not going to take that long. In a Gentoo based distro, it takes a little time, but it wasn't too bad. After that, I pretty much installed all my software again in the terminal. I'm looking through some of my history here in the in Bash. Well, of course, I did all of this using su for super user. I didn't install sudo here in Calculate. I wonder if the history in su works too. But anyway, so pretty much I did some emerge, Thunderbird, Simple Screen Recorder, GU, VCView, OBS Studio, Deadbeef, Termite. Termite is not in the Gentoo repo, so I didn't do Termite. Audacity, Kdenlive. I got rid of Claw's Mail because I installed Thunderbird. I got rid of Clementine because I installed Deadbeef. I did go installed Layman because I needed Zoom from Layman. Let's see what else I did. Discord somewhere in here. Yeah, Discord and Dropbox. And installed VirtualBox. So when I installed VirtualBox, it didn't launch for me right away. You know, you always have to remember to add your user to the VBox users group. So back to the chat. Toss, TrueOS, yeah, TrueOS. Can you believe how popular that thing is on DistroWatch? There must be millions of TrueOS users out there. And he always laughs at Deadbeef, Toss does. Yeah, you know what? Deadbeef is a really nice minimal audio player. Horrible name, but a nice player. A sad thing is that a lot of commoners do not know what a repository is. Yeah, this is why, you know, I made a video recently why Linux sucks for the new user, and it's for that very reason. When you start mentioning things like repositories, syncing a repository, or your average person on the street has no idea what that is. They have to learn a little bit of lingo, Linux jargon, because these are terms they never heard in something like Windows or Mac OS, you know. Quad Feed is in the chat. He loves Swag Arch. Yeah, I liked Swag Arch when I reviewed it. It's nice XFCE Arch-based distro. I'm not sure what really makes it different than like Manjaro XFCE or Antergos XFCE, other than, you know, it's got a prettier theming. Miguel is in the chat. Hi all. Hi Derek. Hi Miguel. And let's see, do you know how to set one workspace per monitor on XFCE? I assume you're talking about where the pager, how many monitors are you using? I use 3 monitors, but I have 4 workspaces, but one workspace is all 3 monitors, and then the next workspace also does all 3 monitors. I'm assuming you want, like, you have a dual monitor system and you want one monitor to be the first workspace and the second monitor to be the second workspace. If that's what you're asking, I have not tried that. Earlier in the stream I mentioned I've never lived in XFCE. I don't know that much about it. You guys know I mostly do like minimal window managers. I don't usually do full desktop environments. But I might get back to you on that, Miguel, the more I play with XFCE. Jeff, repository, like when you can't poop? No, that's not repository. That's something else there. Just got here. Deadbeef hex code, yeah. And Miguel mentions that's correct, his monitor situation. He won't, I guess he has 2 monitors. He wants one monitor to be the first workspace, the second monitor to be the second workspace. I've never played around in any of these full desktop environments to do something like that, but I know a lot of tiling window managers, they do that sort of thing out of the box by default. And things like Xmonad, Qtile, those sorts of things. Whatever workspaces you set, you know, 9 workspaces, and you have 3 monitors. Well, your 3 monitors are workspace 1, workspace 2, workspace 3. When you hit the keyboard to go to workspace 4, whatever monitor had the focus is now on 4 instead of 3 or 2 or whatever it was on. So that's kind of how a lot of these tiling window managers work. Your floating window managers, I've never really tried to do that sort of thing in them. Steen, doing a net install Debian in a day or 2 with i3. Going to be a very lightweight Debian. Yeah. Well, I hope it works out for you, Steen. I've done a lot of minimal Debian installs with the mini ISO doing the net install. It's not too bad. And if you've done i3 before and you already have all your config files saved, maybe you have them in a GitHub repo, you just pull them down, and it's like running i3 on the distro you were running previously. You'd never know the difference. That's what I do anytime I install OpenBox or Qtile or Xmonad or whatever window manager I'm in. I've got all my stuff saved on GitHub. I just pull down my config files and it looks exactly the same, like I was running Manjaro last week, Ubuntu the month before, Arch the month before that. It all looks the same. The only time I would know a difference as far as the distro I was running is when I open the terminal and start doing some package management stuff. They all have their own package managers. But as far as just the look and feel of the desktop, it's exactly the same. That's probably why I've never been that much of a distro hopper. Like some people distro hop every few days. Usually I can be happy on any distro because I just pull down my old config files and I have what I'm used to. So Harish, after being afflicted with severe distro hoposisis, what the heck is that? I finally settled down on OpenBox on Arco Linux. Eric Dubois has done an awesome job with that thing. I wouldn't mind suggesting it to newbies even. I do like Arco. I do like Eric Dubois. I do like OpenBox. No, I would not suggest that for a newbie. That a new user needs to get their feet wet with something a little easier than Arco or any Arch-based distro. Even Manjaro and Tergos, as much as people love to call them beginner distros because the install is easy. Yeah, just because the install is easy, maintaining that thing is not that easy. New users are not going to keep a system up to date as regularly as they should. That's a problem in a rolling release distro, right? In Arco Linux, I mean, you have to install, or at least when I reviewed it recently and I did the awesome window manager edition of Arco, you have to do a git clone into their repos, the Arco Linux repos on GitHub. And then you have to run some shell scripts. Yeah, your grandmother's not running through the Arco Linux install. But I do love the distro. I think it's one of the best things going right now. I almost installed Arco Linux this morning instead of Calculate Linux. The only reason I didn't, I had just run Manjaro. I'd been living in an Arch world for a little while. I was like, yeah, let's do something different. But I almost put Arco Linux on this thing. And if I had, I would have put OpenBox on it. Right, in your opinion, what is the best Arch-based distro for someone who has never touched Arch? Manjaro. Manjaro is probably the safest one to go with. Miguel agrees, Manjaro, yeah. The reason I say Manjaro is because the Manjaro forums, again, I mentioned I did play around in the Manjaro forums when I was running it. Very active, very friendly. So eventually you're going to need support on an Arch-based distro, and I feel like the Manjaro community does a pretty good job there. Unlike the mainline Arch community at the Arch forums. Not that they're bad, but every now and then you get some strange stuff in the Arch forums when you go there for support. Of course, you get the RTFM, read the effing manual. Also, Manjaro, they hold packages back for about 2 weeks compared to mainline Arch. So they hold it back for a couple of weeks, so if there is a breakage in Arch, they know about it ahead of time and can fix that before they push it out. And I ran Manjaro for about 3 months. I had no breakages. No major breakages anyway. Occasionally, a package would update and it would, mess up some configs or something. But, Pulse Audio had some problems with an update one time. It basically deleted the config file I had for Pulse Audio. So all my settings were wrong. The microphone settings were wrong. The camera and everything was screwed up. But not that that's a hard fix, but That's something a new user probably would not find enjoyable. You know, you install something like Ubuntu or Fedora or whatever Mint, elementary, whatever version of Pulse Audio was installed, that's all you're getting. It's never being updated until you upgrade to the next version of Ubuntu. That's really the safe way to go. Is just do static release distros for new users. A new user has no business being on a rolling release. Evil Step Twin. I actually sort of liked Netrunner. I reviewed Netrunner. It wasn't bad either. Again, it's Manjaro based for the rolling release, if that's the one you're talking about. The static release is based on, is it Debian or Ubuntu? I haven't actually looked at the static release. I know the rolling release is Manjaro based. And it's not bad. And Steen, I've been running Linux for 25 years, still haven't tried Arch, even if I wanted to, just too unsecure when you've got Debian. Yeah. You know, if you're on a Linux distro and it's working for you, stick with it. Honestly, that's what I would do. If I wasn't doing this YouTube channel, on most of my machines I would install something, and as long as it kept working, I would never install another distro on it. Until there was some reason to. And for most Linux distros, there's no reason to move on to something else. Like, you're never going to have a major breakage for the most part in a lot of distros. I distro hop a little bit on my machines here, mainly just for the purposes of this channel. You know, I said I was going to eventually take a look at Calculate Linux on physical hardware, so here I am doing it. But there was no reason really for me. I mean, I mentioned I was having some problems with Antics. I probably could have fixed those problems. Before that, I was on Manjaro. There was nothing wrong with my Manjaro installed. I still, wiped it out and went on to something else. Before Manjaro, I had the Ubuntu LTS on this desktop. There was nothing wrong with it. What is it? Is it Retrainer? Hope I got that name right. I'm looking for a laptop with Thunderbolt 3. 40 gigabytes, one that can run Linux with Windows 7 in VirtualBox. Need one application for work. I'm assuming for the Windows 7. Any suggestions for hardware? Dell, HP? No, I have no input on that. Never had a machine with a Thunderbolt. What application do you need Windows 7 for? Is it a well-known application, or is it some custom app for your work? Miguel says he has a suggestion. Quad feed Dell XPS 13. Miguel suggests the Galago Pro from System 76. Yeah. I've never used either one of those, the Dell or the System 76, but they're well-respected machines. A lot of people use them. Yeah, Evil Step Twin, 4 cores or more. Okay. I've never bought any hardware from System 76. I've bought some machines before that had Linux pre-installed, from smaller shops, custom shops, online, but I've never went and bought anything from System 76. I should. Reason I've never done it is they tend to be a little pricey. That said, everybody raves about the quality of their product. One day I need to actually purchase one of their machines. And if I spend a little more, I don't mind too much. I like supporting, good people, especially companies that are supporting Linux. One thing I had mentioned earlier when I went through the install of Calculate, my time is not right. This is UTC time, so I need to figure out how to change that. I had run a command in the terminal earlier, right before I started the stream, like 2 minutes before I started the stream. What command was that? I'll never find it now. I better just type history, see what it was. No. I must have run it as super user. Really need to install sudo here on this machine. No, right here. /etc/timezone. That particular file has UTC written. Obviously, I need to change that to something more appropriate. Next time I see Sergey, I'll see if he can help me with the time zone. Back to the chat for a second. I think System 76 looks good. A bit spendy, but not sure if it'll run the Windows 7. Maybe. Were you going to run Windows 7 in VirtualBox, though? If you're running Windows 7 in VirtualBox, it shouldn't matter. But even if you were going to install Windows 7 on the hardware itself, I would think the System 76 hardware would be just fine with that. Miguel, I have 16 gigs of RAM and I give 8 gigs to the machine with 3 cores, 6 threads when running the VM. Yep. I do something similar when I do my VMs for this channel. I have 16 gigs of RAM on the host machine, and I usually give the VMs, I usually give them about 6 gigs. Sometimes less, sometimes more, depends. Depends on, you know, what the distro is. If it's something very, very lightweight and minimal, I may only give it 2 gigs. Alright, for those of you that are not that familiar with Gentoo based distros, I've played around in them enough to be dangerous, but I am by no means a Gentoo expert. I've never lived in one, other than I had Sabian installed on physical hardware for a very short time at one point many years ago. But Sabian does binary packages, and they do their own package manager that they call Equo. Yeah, well, the package manager's name is actually Entropy. Equo is the command line interface for Entropy. But you can use a merge in Sabian. It is compatible with it, but Sabian recommends you don't do that. You need to either use Equo or a merge, but not both. So I never used a merge, so I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to use the emerge command line interface to Portage. Looking at the man page here that's on Calculate Linux website for emerge, there is a lot to emerge. A lot of stuff. Look at this man page. When you look at the man page for apt and pacman and those sorts of things, they're not quite like that. So I really have got my work cut out for me learning the emerge command line interface to Portage. I know a few basic commands to sync the repos, install software, remove software. Are any of you running Gentoo or Gentoo based distros? I'm just curious about the chat. Or matter of fact, you guys in the chat, I don't think I've ever done this on one of the streams. What are you guys running? I would be interested to see what most of you are running. Steen asked about my experience with KDE. He saw my videos about KDE and Manjaro. Was my experience bad, good, unusable, great? It wasn't great. It wasn't unusable either. I would say okay. I could live in it. I wouldn't be happy with it though. Miguel says KDE on Manjaro is not pretty good. Yeah, that's how I would word that too. It's not pretty good. If you're going to do Manjaro, I suggest XFCE. Well, Manjaro does consider their XFCE edition the flagship edition of Manjaro. Evil Step Twin. Entropy and I are different associations. Evil steps in. Win 7 is what you're running? Windows 7, okay. Nikolai Pavlov. Windows 10 Home. Evil Step Twin was running Windows 7 Home. Dan is running Debian Sid with i3. Okay. Keegan is running Lubuntu, Fedora, Mint, and MX. Okay, well. Are you multi-booting, or are these all different machines? Miguel mentions he doesn't know what's the difference between Debian-based or Gentoo-based. It means the distro is based on another distro. Ubuntu, for example. Let's take Ubuntu. Ubuntu is based on another Linux distribution called Debian, because these Linux distributions are free and open source projects. You can take that code and you can make them your own. You can tweak them, modify them, repackage them. You need to change the name, and then that's how Ubuntu became Ubuntu. They took Debian, they improved on it, they called it Ubuntu. Then people take Ubuntu and then they make whatever distribution they want to make out of Ubuntu, elementary, for example. So that's what when we say something is Debian based or Arch based or Gentoo based, it means that distro is based on Debian or Arch or Gentoo. Steen is running i3 on Debian testing. Well, we got some i3 people running Debian. That's unusual. A lot of the i3 crowd, they tend to stick to Arch. Jeff mentions Porthole is the GUI front end I meant for portage. Okay, I will definitely take a look at that, Jeff. I appreciate that. Miguel, neither Arch or Gentoo. I don't know what is Gentoo about. Gentoo is a Linux distribution. Now let me pull up the Gentoo homepage. I'm pretty sure I had it in my bookmarks, but let's see if I can. Anyway, actually I'll just Google Gentoo. It's even better. Probably get better information as far as easier to understand information. Gentoo Linux. Gentoo Linux is a Linux distribution built using the Portage package management system. That's their particular package management tool, Portage. Unlike a binary software distribution, the source code is compiled locally according to the user's preferences. What does this mean? Unlike most other Linux distributions, Gentoo doesn't ship binary packages. You have to build these packages yourself from source. You have to give these packages certain flags based on your preferences, what your settings are for your particular hardware is usually what you're doing this for. This is pretty advanced stuff. It's not something most Linux users want to do or have the need to do. It's also kind of slow. Building stuff from source, compiling software takes time. It's much easier to install a binary. But anyway, Gentoo is the Gentoo Linux distro. Calculate Linux is based on Gentoo. They took Gentoo and basically added some of their own stuff to it, some of their own utilities. I believe they do package some binaries. They have their own repo that they add to the Gentoo repos. Of course, you do have to compile some stuff. Some stuff you will pull down from Gentoo repos. And if you want to, you can give it whatever flags and compile it to your particular settings, a lot of the software. Will I be doing much of that? I don't know. I'll play around with some of it. Do I have a real need to do that? No, probably not. The advantage of something like Gentoo, if you have like odd hardware, like really old hardware or hardware that was not very popular when it was around, and you need to compile certain things for that particular piece of hardware that you've got that's not mainstream, that's where something like Gentoo comes in handy, like particular CPU architecture. Like you have like a 486 kind of machine. I don't know of any Linux distro that really supports that kind of thing anymore, but I'm sure Gentoo, you can compile everything to work on such a machine. Anyway, that's basically Gentoo in a nutshell. Kevin, he's running Antergos, Mint, Peppermint, MX, Solus. Wow, you guys are running a lot of distros on your machines. Keegan, he's a mixture of both. I'm not sure. Michael Pate, he's on Windows 10. Miguel, Windows 10 and Ubuntu, but wishing to try Fedora. Yeah, if you're going to try Fedora, wait. Well, I mean, you can go ahead and try it, but if you're going to install it on physical hardware, I would wait till May. That is when the next edition of Fedora will be released, assuming it doesn't get delayed. Alright, Carlos. I am using and loving KDE Neon. Okay. Miguel mentions he knows what Gentoo base means, he just doesn't know what is Gentoo. Okay. And it's a Linux distro. It's been around for a little while. The first release of Gentoo was right around the time Arch and Ubuntu and all. I think Arch was around the same time. Yeah, Gentoo was released March 2002. So I think Arch was also came to be around that same time. Ubuntu, the first release of Ubuntu was in 2004. Of course, the really old Linux distros are Debian and Slackware. They've been around since the beginning, practically. 1993 for both of those. Dan Carter, or actually it's Miguel. I am an XFCE lover and user. Okay. Nexus, running Void right now. Was running Gentoo for about a month. Thinking of going back, but loving Void. I thought about installing Void actually on physical hardware. I might try Void eventually. Maybe by the end of the year, sometime within this calendar year, I'm going to install Void on one of my machines and live in it for a little bit, because I think Void is interesting. I think it's an interesting project. Let's see, Keegan. Lately, Ubuntu has been acting kind of buggy for me. I'm not sure why, but if I install Xubuntu, then put LXDE on top of it, it runs great. Well, if you're installing Lubuntu from the same ISO, and it's always buggy for you, maybe you need to try a different ISO. Matter of fact, we're almost up to the 1804 releases, the next LTS releases. You can go ahead and pull down like the daily build of Lubuntu 1804. I'm sure it's stable enough. because it's not going to change much between now and whatever 3 weeks when it's released. Maybe pull that thing down. Try it. Miguel mentions, I see, got it. That's not something I would ever dig into. Yeah, to be honest, it's probably not something I would dig into if I didn't do this channel. I have no reason to compile my own software. If you, as a distro, present me with prepackaged binaries that are ready to go, I'm going to take that all day, every day, over I'm going to build it myself. I'm not interested in building my own software. So, Sim Gunther, imagine Sebian without systemd, better documentation, and an option to use Pacman or Emerge. That would bring Gentoo to the masses. Yeah. I'm not sure what you're saying there. Who needs better documentation? Sebian? Gentoo's documentation is really good. Gentoo probably has the best documentation of any Linux distro. Maybe not Arch. Arch and Gentoo, though, they've got fantastic wikis. Matter of fact, I recommend every single Linux user, regardless of what distro you're running, you really need to bookmark both the Arch Linux wiki and the Gentoo wiki. They're that good. You're much more likely to find solutions to your problems than, than looking at something like the Ubuntu wikis or Debian's wiki. Let's see, is there any way to show f.ex screenshots in a chat like this? I'm not sure what you mean there. I'm not understanding that. Is there a way to do it yourself? I'm assuming that's Crunchbang, the old Crunchbang distro that's been dead for several years now. If they still have their repos up on GitHub, I don't know if you can find like the Crunchbang configs for what they did with OpenBox. There's no reason you couldn't just take Debian and do your own. But honestly, there's Crunchbang++. I would take a look at Crunchbang++. I would take a look at Salient OS. And Bunsen Labs should be putting a new release out very soon based on Debian 9. They're still using Debian 8 for some reason on their current release, but Crunchbang++ is pretty close to what the old Crunchbang was. If you're looking for a Debian-based distro, which is what Crunchbang was. Now, if you don't mind doing Arch-based distros, you have Archbang, Archmerge, I think there's Archbox, Archstrike, Archman. I don't know. There's a million Arch-based distros that use OpenBox. The best ones are Arch Labs and Archmerge, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on Ubuntu 18.04 telemetry? I'm assuming that's for me. And that's from Dan Carter. I don't mind it at all. Their telemetry is nothing really personal. They're not looking at anything as far as your files on your system or anything like that. They just want hardware information. They want to know what kind of computer you're running, what CPU you're running, what GPU you're running. And they want to know in the installer, so they can make the installer better. They want to know, hey, we offer installing updates in the installer. How many people really tick that on? And they're also going to offer this new minimal install. They want to know how many people choose to go with that. Because if most people are going to install the updates, why even make that an option? Just go ahead and have it turned on. Same thing with the proprietary drivers. I bet almost everybody installs the proprietary drivers anyway. So, but they probably just want to get a feel for that. That way they can make some informed decisions later about things in the installer. There's nothing scary about the telemetry that Ubuntu's wanting. They're not even going to have any idea as far as like location. They'll know country, but they're not getting IPs. They're not getting anything that can remotely tell anyone anything personal about you. So Ubuntu's telemetry is a non-issue, really. When that story came out about it, I know a lot of people made it seem bigger than it was, but that's because a lot of news sites and a lot of YouTubers, you know, they have to get views, they have to get clicks, so a lot of that is clickbait when you see these crazy article titles like Ubuntu has spyware, or Ubuntu is invading your privacy, or, you know, none of that is true. That's completely false. Miguel, thanks for the advice. I've been using Ubuntu for about 2 years, but I have another PC that is getting slow with Windows 10, and Fedora is something I'm really looking forward to try. Okay, if Windows 10 is slow on your computer, you might not want to go with Fedora, at least not Fedora with GNOME. That particular desktop environment is kind of heavy. It's not as heavy as Windows 10. It's still going to run much better than Windows 10, but compared to like your other Linux desktop environments, GNOME is pretty heavy. So be prepared for that. Evil Step Twin, I sort of like your style as to a noob. Okay. Ron is running Kubuntu 18.04 beta with Wayland. Seems to be running good 2 weeks in. Yeah. And I was mentioning to someone else earlier in the stream that the 18.04 releases are close enough now. I would have no problems telling somebody to go pull down like the daily build of Kubuntu, Lubuntu, Xubuntu, and go ahead and installing it. In 3 weeks, you're already going to be ahead of the game. You're already going to be on 18.04. So, Fedrick, hey DT, any recommendations, thoughts for watching YouTube outside of a browser? VLC is hit or miss. There are certain tools for watching YouTube other than inside the browser. Matter of fact, I didn't install it, but I want to say Calculate Linux came with one out of the box. Is it SMTube? Does that allow me to watch YouTube? Yep. I've never really used this thing, but it's installed out of the box here in Calculate. YouTube browser for the SM player. Now, SM player is my video player here, the SM player, simple player. And SMTube uses SM player to play these YouTube videos. So, there you go. Try SMTube. Alright, Crimson Cobra. First thing to do in Calculate, install Porthole. It's basically Synaptic for Gentoo. Okay. It searches the packages from Calculate binary repos so you don't have to install them from source. Yeah, I like that. I like installing binaries. And Ron Lee also mentioned SMTube for viewing YouTube videos. Xubuntu runs godly on any hardware. Yeah. XFCE in general, yeah, is very speedy, very minimal. That's why I went with it on this machine. And I've got a machine that can handle GNOME and KDE or Deepin or Cinnamon or any of those kind of heavyweight desktops, but you know, I like speed. I'm a speed freak. I want my desktop to want my programs to open as fast as possible, close as fast as possible. I want my menus to open immediately. I don't want any weird like special effects. I don't need things fading in and out, or you know, wobbly windows or anything like that. Cool to look at, but they just get in the way, really. Dan mentions, thanks for clearing things up, Derek. I was a bit worried. I'm not sure what you were worried about. I must have missed that. I'm new to Linux, so what is Calculate Linux about? That's Franco. Franco Calculate Linux is a Gentoo based Linux distribution. Calculate. Let's see. I'm not sure if you're aware of what Gentoo is. We had this problem earlier. A lot of people don't know anything about Gentoo. Here's the Calculate Linux homepage. Let me just read a quick blurb from the Calculate Linux homepage. Let them tell you what it's about. The Calculate project features several distributions optimized for two distinct groups of people: home users, as well as small and medium businesses that prefer open source to proprietary solutions. Okay, that doesn't really tell us anything. It basically tells us they cater to the home user as well as the enterprise user, also have server editions. But basically, it is Gentoo. It's 100% compatible with Gentoo, which means you use the Gentoo repos, or you can use the Gentoo repos. Calculate also has their own repos. So you can pull things down from the Gentoo repos. You can compile all your software from source, just like you do in Gentoo. You can, set different flags when you're compiling. Basically, you build your software to custom suit your needs, is what Gentoo is about. Calculate is basically Gentoo, but it comes with a much easier install. The Gentoo install takes hours, many hours, and really multiple days for the most part. You're probably not going to install Gentoo in one day. You're probably looking at 2 or 3 days. The Calculate Linux install, on the other hand, I ran through the install in less than 10 minutes. Now, updating the system after the initial install took a little while. But just running through the install and getting the base install done, minutes. So that is the difference between Calculate and your standard Gentoo install. Why does the standard Gentoo install take days? Because the standard Gentoo install, you compile every piece of software from source. Again, that takes a long time. It is much quicker to install from a prepackaged binary than building software from source. Think about the kernel when you guys have kernel updates in your package manager. The kernel always takes a little while to install in your package manager because the kernel kind of big. I mean, it's many millions of lines of code, the kernel. Imagine having to compile your own kernel. Not just the kernel, but every single piece of software on your system. And it also depends on your hardware. Like if you have a really good CPU with a lot of cores, a lot of threads, compiling is a lot faster than if you have an older machine. Wow, you might spend a week installing Gentoo. Let's see, I minimize the chat. Let's see what else is going on in the chat. I'm probably going to kill the stream here in a few minutes. I really didn't have too much planned here this evening. Again, the only thing I did today was install Calculate. I had some other videos I had planned on making, but I couldn't get around to because I had to wipe out this machine. So, like, I keep getting people requesting stuff, and I've got so many videos that I need to make. I've got a list of stuff I got to get to eventually. And, I've got more videos that need to be made, but not enough time to make them. So, and today was kind of a wasted day because I spent all day installing Calculate. So this stream, basically I just wanted to do something today. So I figured, you know what, I finally got Calculate up. I installed OBS. I was like, well, let's hit the start stream button and see what happens. And you know what? Everything is working just fine. Mic's working, camera's working. It looks like the stream is strong. It doesn't look like anything strange is going on. So I'm pretty happy with it. you know, in just the first day here in Calculate XFCE. Let's see, back to the chat. What are your thoughts on Cubes? Cubes is a Fedora-based distro. It does a lot of containers. I've never actually looked at it because to review Cubes and to take a look at it, I need to install it on physical hardware. You can't really do something like Cubes in a VM. It won't work correctly. So I don't know anything about Cubes from personal experience. I haven't installed it, haven't run it. Tux1313. Compiz is cool. Yeah, Compiz is cool. Again, I don't usually do those fancy whiz-bang kind of window managers, but Compiz is not bad. Some of the Compiz effects do have some pretty neat features. Like Compiz can do some pseudo tiling stuff that I find very useful when I run something like Unity. Yeah, Miguel mentions, Miguel Becerra mentions he likes the Ubuntu flavors, but if Fedora would be slow, then I would try something like Fedora XFCE. Yeah, much better choice than GNOME. If your hardware is a little on the old side, if it's getting a little old, GNOME is probably not a good desktop environment to run. Alright, Retrainer. Gotta run, guys. Thanks for sharing and all your suggestions. Hope I can return the favor next time. Alright, take care. I'm going to close this down in another 2 minutes or so. So I'm just going to read the last little bit of the chat here and then shut it down for this evening. Let's see. Ron. Does Calculate come with a package manager GUI? No, not one that's installed by default. I had to install and remove software from the command line. I just used emerge in the terminal. They do have a GUI system updater that updates the system for you rather than having to do that in the terminal. But for installing and removing software, you're doing that in the terminal. Although we did have a suggestion earlier about Porthole. Yeah, Crimson Cobra. You can install Porthole, so I'm going to check into that. Thanks for that, Crimson. So maybe in a future video I'll check back with you guys and show you Porthole if I can get it working. Yeah. Then Carlos mentions, have you already tried Redox OS? I've never heard of that one. I'll write that one down though. I'll add it to my ever-growing list of things I need to try out. Redox is a very new operating system written entirely in Rust. Ooh, okay. Yeah, I can try to see if I can get that up and running. A lot of what I do, though, you know, most of the reviews I do in virtual machines. So when you say it's a very new operating system, there's a good chance that there's no way I'm going to get it to run in VirtualBox. I've had this problem with other like new operating systems in the past, you know, like this Xturn, not Xturn, is it Xturn? Xturn OS? I can't get that thing to function correctly in VirtualBox, so I can't really take a look at it. And I've had some other suggestions like that. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and kill the stream, guys. I want to thank all y'all that joined the stream for, you know, this rather pointless stream I was doing. I really just wanted to see if my Calculate Linux install was functioning correctly and to see if OBS was functioning correctly. So I want to thank Ron and Evil Step Twin, Miguel, both Miguels, Dan Carter, Franco, Kevin, Tux, Retrainer, Crimson Cobra, thanks for the suggestion about Porthole, Carlos, Lamer Linux, who says, I want to say this, Manjaro sucks. Okay, I guess your Manjaro experience wasn't that pleasant. Alright, well, good night everybody. Thanks. Peace, guys.